Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for joining us today. Well, we've got another pistol video for you here today, and we're going to be taking a quick look at the LCP2 by Ruger. We've had some requests for some of these other smaller concealable firearms, and Ruger makes quite a few, and we've covered some of the other LCPs, but we haven't had a chance to get to this one just yet, so we're going to look at it today. With a 6+1 capacity and definitely a pocket-sized gun, possibly might be a good contender for concealed carry. Well, we're going to take a look and find out, and we're going to do that in just a minute. All right, once again, welcome back. Thanks for being with us today. If this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've been watching our videos and just haven't had a chance to do so, and you like our content, please consider subscribing. You can locate that subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your computer screen, or if you're on a mobile device, you can scroll down below the video and you can subscribe that way. It's a simple thing that helps us out a whole lot, and we really appreciate it. So, today we have the Ruger LCP2. I have looked at a lot of these smaller guns, and for me, really small guns are often an issue because of big hands. But as long as I can comfortably, manage the firearm, if I can manipulate it and I feel like I can, keep control of it, which is going to be important, obviously, if that time comes you're going to need it, then they're okay. And I was a little surprised that the LCP2 ended up being, not a perfect fit, but a decent fit for even a bigger hand. So let me kind of show you what I'm talking about here. We always like to do a little size comparison to get things going. And, of course, this is a 380 auto. So I thought I'd use another popular 6+1 380 auto as comparison. And that is your Glock 42. Now you can see right away how much bigger the Glock 42 is. Now keep in mind, with the larger frame and the grip on the 42, the 380 round is going to be a little less, you're going to feel it a little bit less when you shoot it, and we'll talk about that at the range section. But of course, the trade-off you're making is this small, super compact package that can go right in your pocket. So if you've carried the 42, or the 43, which is, the 9mm, about the same size, you get a pretty good idea of what this is going to be like. And after all, comfort is pretty important, because if it's not something you're willing to carry, then it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. All right, we're going to jump into the features here, but before we do, I want to take a moment to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the LCP2 by Ruger and 380 Auto. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearms safety and education, and we cannot thank them enough for their support. All right. Well, as usual, I always like to take these features and kind of go from the top down. And looking at this, the sights are going to be one of the more basic things on this firearm. If you look, you just have a basic notch, cut out here in the rear, and then you have a little tiny post. It's all black. There's no dots. Now, obviously, some people are going to criticize that pretty fast. It's not my favorite setup. But you have to remember something. This is you're talking about a firearm with a 2.75 inch barrel. Okay? It's very tiny. It's a 10.6 ounce firearm. So as far as accuracy over any kind of distance where your sights are really going to come into play, it's not going to make that much difference. This is definitely something designed to be carried in a pocket, to be used up close, and of course, really, for any concealed carry situation, you would think that it would be an up-close encounter anyway. Otherwise, you might have to explain some of that long-distance defensive shooting that you're doing. But, so your basic sights here. You do have some pretty deep serrations on the front and the rear of the slide, which is pretty good because the slide, actually has got pretty good spring on it, so to manipulate it, it's not difficult, but it definitely helps to have the serrations on there. You have your slide lock here and release, and it is just on one side. You have your trigger. We'll talk more about the trigger when we get to the range section, but you do have your trigger safety there, and of course you have your internal safeties. You have your trigger guard. You do have a little bit of pattern. You got some grooves on the front here, the trigger guard. So depending on how you hold this firearm, a lot of people, they manipulate their smaller firearms in a lot of different ways. You do have your magazine release here. It's pretty tiny, and the way it's angled, this is definitely something that when you just take your thumb and try to press on it, it's kind of a weird angle. You almost have to just pinch the firearm like this to get a good grip on it, but it's not a big deal. The grip is pretty nice. They've got it broke up into a few, pattern sections here, this 3, and they've got a pretty good amount of it on the back and on the front. Of course, the magazine, just like I was showing you there, it has a little bit on the bottom, and it does have an extension there. Now, and while I've got this out here, I'll show you once again that we are, of course, clear and safe, and we'll proceed. But the fact that you've got that extension on there, it does make a difference, as I said in the beginning, about a larger hand. For me, I don't expect a small firearm like this. I don't expect to get more than 2 fingers on it, but sometimes even getting 2 fingers on a small gun is difficult. That little lip is just enough, as you can see, to get your fingers on there. And to me, it really doesn't feel that weird, even in my big hand. I feel like that if I was in a hurry and I went to grab this, that my fingers would settle in where they need to go. And then, of course, I like the fact that the trigger guard is kind of big. So when I do have my grip, I'm not trying to force my way into the trigger guard there. I think all those are good things. Now, as far as the action on this, just so to be clear, this is a hammer fired. Okay, it's on the inside. If you'll look here, if you will look down, I'm going to put a little bit of light on this, and you'll be able to see on the inside there the mechanism. You saw it move. So you've actually got a internal hammer that's protected, and Ruger's done this with some other models of firearms as well, but just to be clear that it is an internal hammer. So 6+1 capacity, 380 auto. It's got everything you need and nothing that you don't. All right, well, let's talk about the range real quick. So this is a firearm that I've had a chance to shoot a lot. So before we received our beautiful tabletop example here, I have put more rounds than I can tell you through an LCP2. And the best way I can categorize it, it's like I was saying in the beginning. So you take a firearm, something that's made a little bit different, like your Glock 42, okay? Now this is striker fired, and it's a little bit bigger. So obviously it's going to have different characteristics as far as how it feels. It's going to have a little less energy when you fire that 380 round. You're not going to feel it quite as much as something smaller like this. But the trigger on this is actually not bad. First time I took this to the range, I figured, well, this little tiny gun's going to be terrible. But when you engage the trigger here, you don't really have any resistance going to the back, and then it is a nice, solid pull-through with a good break. It is really nice, and it's actually got a decent reset for a little tiny trigger. And I just feel like that as small as the gun is, that trigger is smooth enough, and it's repeatable. Its performance is repeatable every time. It doesn't feel like you have a clumsy, not as well built small firearm in your hand. It actually feels like a much higher end firearm. So as far as shooting the LCP, as I said, this is a firearm that I've had plenty of rounds through, and I haven't had any issues with it being finicky with any type of ammunition. For basic, target shooting and practice, I was using some Blazer Brass 380. But as far as defensive rounds, the Remington Ultimate Defense here, this is a 102 grain jacked at hollow point. I also have some of the Hydra-Shoks. These are 90 grain, and these did very well. And I even had some of the Hornady. This is the Critical Defense. This is also a 90 grain hollow point. And I didn't have any issues with the firearm handling any of the range ammo or any of those hollow points, which made me happy, because a lot of times on these smaller guns, they can tend to be finicky with the defensive ammo. So no real problems. Now, just to tell you, you gotta be realistic, like I said, this is a lot smaller than something like the 42. And there's a lot of other 380 pistols that you can get for carry that are, going to be a bigger frame. And if you shoot a lot of rounds through this little gun, you're going to know it, because as tiny as it is, you're going to start to feel it in your hand after a while. I mean, make no mistake about it. 380 is not the most powerful round in the world, but it is something. So after you've shot a box through this thing, you'll know it. But having said that, obviously, when you go to practice, it's a little different situation than if you're going to have to use the firearm. So, training with regular ammo and a few hollow points here and there just for consistency is a good thing. But I think you'll find that it's plenty comfortable for the amount of rounds that you would need for actual training situation under normal circumstances. So what's it like to carry the Ruger LCP2 as a concealed carry gun? Well, most of the time, whenever I'm looking at a concealed firearm, I usually go into my very, very deep collection of holsters. I have a ton of holsters for a lot of different purposes, but Ruger actually gives you a nice little pocket holster for this gun. And the reason I'm showcasing that little basic holster, I think a gun like this, for me, it's ridiculous for me to put something like this in a holster on the waistband. I'm just not going to do it. If I'm carrying anything from, maybe if I'm carrying a Glock 19, even if I was carrying a Glock 27, something with a little more bulk, I would do it. But these smaller guns like this is definitely a front pocket type of gun. And the material of this, it's kind of suede. It sticks in your pocket so it doesn't tumble around. And, of course, it's got that little pad there to help stabilize it in the pocket. So it's a really good way to carry the firearm. And it's super comfortable. Carry this in my pocket just every day, going to the store, sitting through the movies, even wearing shorts. Just regular shorts, not even cargo shorts, just plain all-weather, like camping shorts. There's enough room to have this in the front pocket with no issues. Blue jeans, and of course, if you want to carry something like this in your dress pants to have a gun on you, when you're working, that type of thing, it's a good little setup. Now, obviously, there's a ton of other options that you can use for something like this, but they give you a great little holster with it, so I don't see any reason not to use it. Super comfortable, super lightweight. It's definitely something that is not going to bother you, because there's hardly anything to it in your pocket. Overall impressions of the Ruger LCP2. Well, when you think about it, it's not really a bad little gun for the money and for what you get. You've got an alloy steel slide and barrel. You've got a internal hammer firing system, which seems pretty smooth and pretty consistent. I like the trigger. The grip is actually pretty good, and with the pinky extension on there, it's even better. Now, if you don't want it and you want the gun as small as it can possibly be, you do have the option to forget about all that, and you can just put this regular, they give you the regular flat plate to put on there too. So you could see how that little tip would be knocked off. So if you think that's going to make a big difference in concealment, you have that option. It shoots pretty well. Like I say, it's meant for up close use anyway. It's a 2 3/4 inch barrel. It's definitely not a precision long distance handgun, that's for sure, but it seems to be pretty well made. It feels solid in the hand, and 7 rounds total of 380. I'm definitely comfortable with that in my pocket as a defensive option. So if you've been thinking about the LCP2 and you wasn't sure what to make of it, it has a retail of about $419. Of course, with gun prices that can vary, but so it puts it in a more reasonable spectrum of guns that you can buy for concealed carry. So if you've had your eye on it, it's definitely worth a look. Okay, well, that's going to do it for today. Once again, we really appreciate you being with us. And as always, we'll be back very soon with another video for you. So until that time, everyone be careful and have a great day. Thank you.